The end is near. Really, it is.
From the Battelle studio at WOSU at COSI, this is Columbus on the Record. Joining Mike Thompson this week, Jackie Borchard, State House reporter for Cleveland.com, Daryl Rowland, public affairs editor for the Columbus Dispatch, Bob Clegg, Republican strategist, and Sandy Tice, director of Progress Ohio.
Presidential campaigns tend to follow the same patterns. There's early primary momentum, post-convention bounces, debate gaffes, October surprises, and where we are right now, polls tightening in the final week. Nationally, Hillary Clinton maintains her steady but slighter lead over Donald Trump, now at 2 points nationally. Here in Ohio, where the minor party candidates could play a role, Trump leads by 3 points if you average the most recent polls. The final weekend will be filled with closing arguments, likely personal ones. Here's a sample.
Here we go again with Clinton. You remember the impeachment and the problems. She is likely to be under investigation for many, many years. Also likely to conclude in a criminal trial. This is not what we need in this country, folks.
Do we want a country that respects women and provides them with equal opportunity?
Yes. Who you are, what you are, does not change after you occupy the Oval Office. All it does is magnify who you are. All it does is shine a spotlight on who you are. If you disrespected women before you were in office, you will disrespect women as president.
Someone who thinks the lives of black people are all crime and poverty and despair. He has no idea.
Daryl Rowland, the polls always tighten in the last week of a campaign. Clinton had a fairly comfortable electoral college vote lead about 10 days ago. How close is this race right now?
That's the key question. And, to paraphrase the Grateful Dead, what a long, strange trip it's been. On our trip, we've been bounced around and jostled around, hit our head on the ceiling a couple of times. But we're kind of where we have been. I mean, certainly going into Tuesday, Hillary Clinton is favored. But you're right, it's not as clear as it once looked just maybe even a week ago. The late FBI revelations, Trump is doing much better. She is still by far the odds-on favorite, but he now has a path, albeit a narrow one, a path to success. That involves Ohio, that involves Florida, a lot of those states that have supported a lot of Democrats in recent years. The bigger question may be who's going to win Ohio. That's the really tight race.
Bob, how confident? Donald Trump, he was up by 5.
Yeah.
It was tied after the tape came out with Billy Bush, and now he's back up by 5 after the FBI.
I think the Trump people feel pretty good about Ohio. In my real job, part of what I do or get is alert emails of when political is placed around the country. And what I found interesting is over the last 3 days, the Hillary Clinton alerts, the vast majority of the TV money are going into 3 states. Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, which that more than anything tells me where they think it may be at. They're at defending some, industrial blue states. And those are the states like Ohio where Trump's going to do a lot better than Republicans typically do. So I think Ohio is going to be pretty much there for Trump, and now it's a question of what other Midwest states might follow.
Sandy, are you pessimistic, optimistic that Hillary can win here?
I think it's going to be close in Ohio, but I think I'm going to tell you guys a secret. The one place where us women's numbers make a difference is in the voting booth. And I've talked to a lot of Republican women who said, I can't vote for him. A lot of women are enthusiastic about Hillary, and a lot of them are terrified for Trump. The Hispanic vote's really important. I think Hillary's going to squeak out a narrow win in Ohio, and I think she's going to win the presidency, and God help us after that.
Jackie, it comes down to turnout. African Americans not as enthused as they were 4 years ago, certainly not as they were 8 years ago. Is there any way of gauging what the turnout will be like among Democrats or their constituencies?
Well, the African American voter turnout for Barack Obama was unprecedented, historic. I mean, that's a special situation where you're voting for the first African American president. So to compare to that is a little bit difficult. But yes, they have been lagging behind by all counts in the big, large counties like Cuyahoga County, for example. Early voting has been, down from where it was in 2012, and so yeah, it really does come out to turnout. I think we have a really big weekend of early voting yet that hasn't been realized, and so going into Election Day, those numbers might perk back up. Franklin County just reported having the biggest day of early voting last week that they've ever had. So maybe people are waiting a little bit longer, but yeah, the turnout is what's going to give Hillary a victory over Donald Trump in Ohio.
Daryl, that Quinnipiac poll had a couple surprising numbers. One is Trump's huge lead among independents. Maybe that wasn't terribly surprising, but the fact, to Sandy's point, Trump and Clinton were tied among women in the Quinnipiac poll. Were you surprised by that? Do you believe that number?
It's astonishing if it's true, and I'm not sure I do. That may be an outlier within the poll. I don't know if the whole poll is an outlier, because I think it certainly is fairly close in Ohio.
Yeah.
The same poll, however, reflected what I think we're seeing in some other surveys, in that Hillary Clinton's unpopularity is now growing to match, in some cases exceed, that of Mr. Trump. We hadn't really seen that. Both very unpopular candidates with the electorate, but now, and again, perhaps because of this recent FBI stuff, she is trending down in that.
Organization, Bob, that's always the people say that Clinton has a definite advantage in organization here in Ohio. The Ohio GOP has been lukewarm towards Donald Trump, to say the least. Sure. What role does organization play, especially if it's only within a couple points?
Mike, and we've talked about this throughout this campaign cycle, that in a typical campaign year, organization's crucial, and getting your vote out is crucial. We're not in a typical campaign year. I think what's showing here is that Donald Trump doesn't have the ground game that Hillary Clinton does, but Donald Trump has more enthused voters. Nationally, it's by 6, 7, 8 points more enthusiasm. So I think what it does is it helps Hillary Clinton try to get to that same level of turnout that Trump's going to have, just because his people are more enthused.
And that's where the email letter last week, Sandy, it just slowed momentum for Hillary Clinton. It maybe dampened enthusiasm for her among folks who are sitting on the fence.
I think it did, but I think one of the things that she has going for her in Ohio is the feud within the Ohio Republican Party. It's so bad that the Trump campaign is having its election night party in one hotel downtown, and the party is having a separate party from the Trump campaign. John Kasich has not endorsed him. He said he wrote in John McCain. He's not enthusiastic about it. I give him credit for standing up to the bully. I think that's going to hurt him a little bit in Ohio.
Jackie, we still got a couple of days left for surprises. It seems like Donald Trump is kind of wed to that teleprompter. You saw it in that clip. He was reading from the prompter. He stayed on script. When he stayed on script before, it's helped him.
Yeah, we've definitely seen that shift in his temperament, to use that popular buzzword of this year, and sticking to the teleprompter, which I'm sure his advisors are encouraging him to do so. And we talk about October surprises. There certainly could be a November surprise with the way that things have been going.
Well, you never know. Ever since Florida's hanging chads in 2000 and Ohio's long lines in 2004, we have scrutinized and fought over the process of voting. This year, we've had our normal amount of court challenges and decisions. And because of Donald Trump's rhetoric of a rigged election, officials and activists remain alert for trouble. Jackie Borchard, how Donald Trump has asked his supporters to become poll watchers. How much of an issue will that be? Will it be any different than it has been the past couple cycles?
So, yeah, this is something that County Board of Elections officials are looking at. In Ohio, we have a decentralized elections system. So it's going to vary by county and by polling location, but basically poll watchers have to follow a set of rules, and they're there to watch. They're not there to interfere with the elections. There are things that they're allowed to do and things that they're not allowed to do, and they can't take photos or videos or interfere with the administering of the elections, and they have to be registered. And the parties do that work, and the poll watchers are supposed to, they go through a training of some sort so that they know the rules. So someone can't just show up at a polling place and say, I'm here to watch the polls, let me in. I mean, 100 feet past the polling place, they can do what they want. They can wear the Trump hat, they can wear their Hillary Clinton t-shirt and pass out materials, but past that point, it's a pretty tight ship.
I thought, what was said about the distance between the state Republican Party organization and the Trump campaign certainly was 100% true. I thought it was interesting, however, the state party, which is the one who does appoint the official election observers to get you on that list, to get you inside the inner sanctum, if you will. But they said they're working with the Trump campaign to put, essentially people that the Trump camp wants in there. So that is an area of cooperation, and again, that's an area of vital importance. We should say that, within a couple hours before we're taping this show, a federal judge in Cleveland handed down a ruling, a temporary restraining order on the Trump campaign to prevent any possible voter intimidation. That was litigation brought by the Ohio Democratic Party. So we're not fighting over voting per se, but now kind of behavior at the polling places.
Sandy, if there are rules, why is fears of intimidation there?
I think some of the little pockets of violence we've seen as a response to this election. There was a black church burned, and somebody wrote on the side of the church, "Vote Trump." Some of the Trump people have bullhorns and early voting sites in other states, and they're harassing people. So if you go to vote early, or if you vote in person on election day, don't engage those people. Go in and get your ballot cast and get out of there and talk to the people who are the official polling observers, and they'll take care of it. I think both parties are really paying attention to this, trying to make sure that people get to vote peacefully.
And to be fair, Sandy, we had a Trump headquarters firebombed in North Carolina a couple weeks ago. So it's happening. Both sides have gotten so polarized that you're seeing this kind of stuff going on. But I don't think we're going to have any kind of problems. This is an issue that's been out there before. If you remember back in 2004, we had a federal judge on the morning of the election make a ruling on Bush poll watchers being allowed in to polling places. So it's an issue that's been out there for years.
Mm-hmm. And there is a standing court order against the Republican National Committee that really limits what they can do in the polling places. In other words, they can't challenge or do basically anything. So the Trump people are saying, we're not them, they're not us, whatever, but if there's any shenanigans, you can bet that after the election that'll be an issue that will be challenged.
Well, and Friday's court order really it's not, even though it's a temporary restraining order on the Trump campaign and affiliated friends, it's directed at everybody who's involved in elections, just as a reminder to enforce the existing rules and laws.
It's going to be a pretty boring job to be a poll watcher. I mean,
it is.
Really, nothing really happens. You can't look over the shoulder, I take it. You can't make sure that the person's voting or not voting. So I don't know.
What's nice, though, is that we have equal numbers of Republicans and Democrats assigned to pay attention, and I think they do a nice job of keeping an eye on each other.
Maybe it'll entertain them while they're sitting there.
Maybe it will.
Just sort of 30,000 feet. Daryl, any particular county we should be watching on election night that'll tell us how Ohio might go?
Well, I'm dying to see Mahoning and Trimble County, first of all.
Me too.
Youngstown area.
Yeah, the Youngstown, Warren area. We've had, and I just had a reporter there just yesterday. It's the same old thing. A lot of, those are heavily Democratic areas, but not this year, at least not at the top of the ticket. They're still very enthused for Trump, and there's even talk that he could take that. He certainly is going to get more than the typical candidate. Now, that's not going to be the be-all and end-all. There's several key areas, I think Sandy mentioned the suburban areas. Again, a lot of people, suburban women especially, who are Republican women, not necessarily enamored of Mr. Trump.
Bob, any chance that Delaware County, strong Republican county, goes for Hillary Clinton?
No way. The only question is going to be, and these are the things you want to look at on election night. In a Delaware County, you want to look at, okay, they're going to vote for Trump. At what margin? At what level? If it's the same as Romney, okay, because he's going to pick up a lot of Democrat votes that Romney didn't get. If it's less than Romney, then it's like how much less, and maybe whatever Democrats he's getting is being offset. If it's more than Romney got, then he's going to win. I think the other county you want to look at is Cuyahoga, and just what kind of margin Hillary's going to have. It's interesting that she's there today with Jay-Z, and she's going to be there again Sunday. Early voting has been really down in that county, and I think they're really, really concerned about the African American turnout and just the turnout in general in Cuyahoga.
I agree with Cuyahoga County and also Hamilton. I'll throw Hamilton County in the mix for the same, for all of these counties really working in together, because if Trump makes inroads in Mahoning County, then Clinton has to make up the difference somewhere else, and she's looking at Cuyahoga County, she's looking at Hamilton County to do that.
Sandy, what about Franklin County? Usually we're the epicenter, but it seems like this cycle it's been more Northeast Ohio for the number of visits and where the concentration is. It's not Columbus anymore.
The Cleveland media market's still huge, and it still supplies a large number of votes for both Democrats and Republicans. Franklin County, I think, is a little different economic mix. It's a little more tamped down.
But is it solidly in the Hillary Clinton camp?
I think it is.
And that's why they're not paying as much attention
I definitely think it is. And I think the ground game, the Franklin County slate cards for the Democratic Party have always been very successful and carried lots of Democrats over the finish line.
And remember, Cleveland's part of that industrial Rust Belt in Ohio. Columbus isn't. It's always been less manufacturing oriented, more academic, and I think the Clinton people feel much better about Franklin County than they do about Cuyahoga.
Yeah, I think from what the people I've talked to have done internal polls along with other races, Trump's going to get crushed inside of I-270.
All right, we'll see. Senator Rob Portman continues to hold a commanding lead over challenger Ted Strickland, according to the latest Quinnipiac poll. Portman leads the former Ohio governor by a whopping 18 points, thanks to fundraising and outside support. Portman has widened his lead from 3 weeks ago when the Republican held just a 13-point lead. Bob Clegg, any chance that Rob Portman supporters get complacent and stay home?
No, because as much as I love Rob and everything, and let me say, the number one reason why he's ahead is because of his campaign. He's had a great campaign. But it's the top of the ticket that drives turnout, even in presidential years. So, I think he is going to win handily because, number one, he's had a great campaign. Even down to Snapchat filters that are available at various universities for kids to use. And number two, the Democrats probably picked the worst possible candidate they could have picked in a environment like we have currently. A 75-year-old former governor with an awful record. You just can't sell that.
It was a terrific campaign. It was brilliantly effective and remarkably deceptive. Rob Portman has pitching himself as an independent voice in the Senate. Show me anything he has done in the Senate that justifies him calling himself an independent. He signs the treasonous letter to Iran. He votes to defund Planned Parenthood. He stands with his party leaders in saying that they won't even hold hearings on one of the most qualified men ever nominated for the U.S. Supreme Court, and he's gotten away with it. So nice job on the campaign, guys.
Now, Sandy,
yes.
On one important issue to you and to a lot of people, he was ahead of his time. That was gay marriage. He came out in support of gay marriage before Hillary Clinton did, because he actually didn't base it on polls. He based it on his own personal experience, which you got to give the guy credit for that.
Yeah, he did, because he has a gay son, and I thought that was a very nice thing for him to do. But that doesn't qualify him to be an independent voice in the Senate in any way.
A lot more independent than most politicians.
Jackie, any chance that Ted Strickland had of perhaps building up some momentum had to have evaporated with the FBI letter, bringing Hillary Clinton back down because enthusiasm dampened for her and probably for Ted Strickland.
Right.
As well.
I think Strickland was really counting on riding Clinton's coattails and against Trump, and we've seen that in their campaign throughout. They've been trying to tie Rob Portman to Donald Trump, and it just hasn't stuck. It's like throwing Jello at the wall, really. And they even tried after that tape came out, where Portman didn't immediately denounce Trump, and I think it was the next day, and they whipped out an ad really quickly, even just criticizing him for taking 24 hours to do that, and that still didn't move the needle at all.
It might have been more interesting if the playing field had been more even in terms of dollars and cents. In this case, sorry, Bob, I think I agree more with Sandy as far as the ads. I think deceptive is a little strong word, but I think they were misleading as far as, the world ended in Ohio Ohio's budget because of Ted Strickland. Well, yeah, there was a national recession. Could he have led better, done different things? Absolutely. But to blame him for draining the rainy day fund, it's like that's what it's there for. For Senator Portman to say, well, I would have just enacted what John Kasich and those people did. Well, that stuff took, even if you give that credit for turning Ohio around, that took months, if not years, to take effect. I mean, it's almost a ludicrous answer. It's almost embarrassing, to be real honest with you. But that's like Jello against the wall.
There was so much advertising too, and a year plus ago, Strickland was leading in the polls. He had much better name recognition, higher favorability, and really the Portman campaign and third outside money groups were able to define Strickland before he had a chance.
So why wasn't it comes down to money? Why wasn't he able to raise Strickland any more money than he did?
He had an unbelievable fundraising advantage on the Portman side, but I think to Jackie's point, he was ahead, I think 9 points in the early polling, and you didn't see them use that 9-point advantage to try to explain what kind of governor he really was. He was a good governor under really awful circumstances. He protected the safety net. He did some good things. We ended up having one of the best school funding formulas in America. Independent national groups said that. He did some nice things for higher education. He did great things for alternative and renewable energy. And you didn't see his people really talking about those things. They just sort of sat on their lead for a while.
Hey guys, the facts are the facts, okay? Now, he was there at the wrong time. Who cares? Facts are the facts. It was his job in his campaign to answer the charges. They didn't. So, therefore, they're in the situation they're in. The other big problem he's got is his one base of support in the state, Southeast Ohio, is Hillary Clinton's going to get killed. And she's dragging him down like an anchor.
Yeah. Our last topic, of course, there are other contests on the ballot. Perhaps the most compelling in Central Ohio is the race for Franklin County prosecutor. For the first time in 16 years, Prosecutor Ron O'Brien faces a serious challenge from City Council President Zach Klein. In a Columbus Metropolitan Club debate this week, both politicians painted each other as, well, politicians.
This is an elective office, but it's not a political office. Mr. Klein's a professional politician. He didn't answer the question that was asked. He used improper, inaccurate information in his answer. He talked about what the job of the office is. He has no idea what we do, and he has no idea what we are doing now.
The irony is that Ron has been running for office since 1985. So to say that I'm the politician would not be the full, true extent of the story.
Sandy Tice, this has been obviously a close race, but sometimes nasty. A little taste of it there.
Yeah, we did. The one thing that I think Zach Klein really has going for him is growing frustration in Franklin County, that the Franklin County prosecutor has the unique responsibility to prosecute public corruption at the State House. And the charter school scandal has been going on for way too long, and the only explanation for Ohio tolerating terrible performance from some of these charter schools and terrible wasting of money is the campaign contributions that have flowed to the people who are positioned to change it. They haven't done anything.
Is Zach Klein the guy to prosecute corruption at Columbus City Hall?
I think he would. I think he would do it in a different way than Ron O'Brien has. And these new commercials that have come out, there's one that just blows me away. Apparently Ron O'Brien agreed to a plea bargain. It's a really sad case where a 10-year-old girl was raped, and the family didn't want her on the witness stand, which is understandable. And so the prosecutor's office justified signing off on that deal as a way to help the family. Well, if you're the Franklin County prosecutor, you have a responsibility to the entire county. And anybody who lets a rapist out who raped a 10-year-old isn't doing their job. There's a lot of frustration over that.
Okay, number one, Zach Klein should be worrying about corruption in City Hall, like you mentioned. And, clean up your own house first before you want to try to do it, somewhere else. Number two, the guy's had no experience as a prosecutor, period. Inexperience. And number three, Democrats want this really bad. And you know why? Because they want to use it for political purposes, just like Sandy was saying. They want to try to do it just so they can cause political problems and try to get Republicans and try to, prosecute Republicans wherever they can. That's the only reason they want to do it. They don't care about the crime or victims of crime.
When Mike Miller was the Franklin County prosecutor, he was a Republican, he appointed a special prosecutor to look into then Democratic Governor Dick Celeste. People were indicted, heads rolled. He did his job. He understood the responsibility of the Franklin County prosecutor, and Ron O'Brien has never followed up on that.
Ron O'Brien has gone against both Republicans and Democrats.
On minor stuff.
No. He's going after.
But he inherited that case. Somebody else did all the work and handed it to him.
Inherited. He was been county prosecutor since 1995.
He didn't get the investigation started. Okay. Lucas County did.
We'll settle it all on Tuesday, for everybody. Off the record, final parting shot. Sandy Tice, you're up first.
There on December 16th, there's a status conference involving a case where Donald Trump is accused of raping a woman when she was 13 years old. It has the unusual benefit, I guess, of having witnesses who say they personally witnessed this. One of the other people who was accused of it is convicted pedophile Jeffrey Epstein. This case has not gotten the attention that it deserved. It's all over the internet, all over social media. Please take a look at that and decide if you want somebody who faces that to be the leader of the free world.
And this is the problem with campaigns, people like this saying things like that. Jeffrey Epstein, who you mentioned, who Bill Clinton went on 26 trips to various islands with, who's a convicted pedophile, and Bill Clinton is a buddy of his, and Bill Clinton went on these trips. So Sandy, let's tell the whole story.
All right.
Let's tell the whole story.
Daryl?
Okay?
I'm supposed to talk about politics. It's the week before the election, but I lost a dear friend and a former colleague, Ron Simon. When I first started in journalism in Mansfield, Ohio. He was a fantastic writer, stayed his whole career there. Vietnam veteran from the early 60s. He was there before most people knew. I lost him, so it's a real tragedy to our profession.
Okay. And Jackie?
And in the middle of all this, I was so thankful for that World Series between the Chicago Cubs and the Cleveland Indians, and so I just have two words: the Cubs win.
Oh. Jackie is a lifelong Cubs fan. So, Chief Wahoo, days are numbered. I think after the publicity the Indians saw in the World Series, the final nail in Chief Wahoo as the official emblem of the Indians is over. And by next season, he'll be gone, at least from the stadium and the uniforms. Don't forget, complete coverage election night here on WOSU TV and 89.7 NPR News. Radio starts at 7, TV starts at 8, and everything also on WOSU.org as well. For our crew and for our panel, I'm Mike Thompson. Have a good week.